Hi there, Nigel Saunders here of KW Bonsai. Today we're going to be repotting my Pinus sylvestris. It's a Scots pine that was collected many years ago, and I'm growing it in the tall, thin, flat top style. The last video on this tree was just over a year ago, and I did some hard pruning on the ends of the branches, doing sort of a Hail Mary cut, just cutting into the old needles, reducing the needle section of the branch by about half, and it worked. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, at least 7 buds in that area that became active. I didn't repot the tree last spring because I had just done that major work on the top of the canopy, so I didn't want to do too many things at once and kill the tree. So I waited till this spring to repot it, and it sure needs a new pot. My root base in this is sort of a wild mountain type root base, so I can see this tree eventually growing over top of a rock, or looking like it's growing in the mountains, that type of a that type of a look. So the first step today will be to get this tree out of the pot and see exactly how the roots are doing. So first I'm going to loosen the tree up from the pot, which I don't really know if that's necessary because the pot's quite loose to begin with. However, I'll free it up just in case there's something binding in there. It all looks pretty good. Okay, let's try and get this tree out. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it looks like it's grown a good mat of roots. There's only a few surface roots growing into the ground, but looks like they've done quite well. I'm going to start by combing the roots out. So here I go. It looks like it has a nice fine fibrous root system in here, which is always good. I've got several stones picked out or selected for this tree. The soil it's in is nice and loose and crumbly. I'm quite happy with that. My drainage screen on the bottom down here. There it is. I'll start on the bottom now, raking those roots out. Again, starting from the center and working outwards. Looks like there's quite a mat of roots on the bottom. So I'm going to wash the roots now. Just in a tub of water, swish it around. I've got the roots all washed off now, and you can see the roots are quite long, and it looks like I could drape it over a rock really nicely. So I think it's ready for that type of a planting. I think this rock will work well. Let's see. Maybe something like that, or that seems to grip it well there. Right there. This rock is a limestone rock, and it's sitting in a metal tray that's filled with water. So in order to make this a planting, I'm going to have to drill holes in this metal tray for drainage. So I'll do that next. I have all my holes drilled. I put a whole bunch in. This is an aluminum baking tray. It's nice and strong. It won't crack ever. So I picked these up at the secondhand stores, and they make great pots. The next step for this composition will be picking the front of the rock to position it and the tree to try and make a pleasing composition. This will be the hard part. I'm going to take the tray away, and we'll just look at the rock. So the rock has some interesting features down low. This side has some nice features up high here, and they go all the way around this side. This has an interesting hollow. This side's quite plain here. This reminds me of like a cliff face. The rock upside down, to me, just doesn't work. It's got lots of pockets for soil, but I just don't like the shape of the rock upside down, so I like the rock this way. I do like these finger type protrusions on the rock, and I like this little hollow here, so I'm thinking something like this, with the tree up here and this sort of in the background. I'll try it with the tree and see what looks good. I've got the tree now, so kind of about here was the front of the tree from last time. So we could have it leaning off the cliff, which I don't really like. It's not too bad there, I don't know. You can have it more upright like this. More of a tree back on the rock. There's a lot of good possibilities. I'll have to sit down, look at them all, and then I'll come back and show you my decision. So I'm back. It took about, I don't know, almost 20 minutes of trying out all different kinds of positions. And I chose this one because the roots fit the rock nicely. The tree looks balanced on the rock. And it looks good to me. There were several other versions that look quite good also. There's no right or wrong. It's just, you know, if you tilt the tree, it creates a different look. If you reposition the rock and the tree, it creates a different look. But this is one that I like. And the roots fit the rock nicely, so this is going to be how it's going to be planted. I'm going to start by putting some drainage screens over the holes in the pot. So I'll lift the tree away with the rock, keeping the same position, and I'll start preparing the pot. I've got my drainage screens in place now, so I'll start adding a thin layer of bonsai soil to the bottom of the pot, and the rock will sit on top of this. And this soil mix is half perlite, half turfus, with about 20% fir bark, shredded fir bark mixed in. And all the ingredients are sifted to get rid of the fine particles. So you're left with a particle size of about 3 to 4 millimeters, or 1/8 inch. So there's my thin layer down. Now I'll position the tree and the rock in the pot. Okay, here we go. I'm going to sort out all these roots a little later on. I think somewhere about here. I'm going to look at the composition from a distance here and just make sure everything's looking good. I think the top part of the tree looks a little flat on. I think I'm going to rotate it a bit. Let's see how that looks. That's maybe looking a little too symmetrical. Kind of the rock's in the center, the tree's in the center of the rock. I'll just try tweaking it a bit. So I changed my mind completely about the tree. I like the rock in that position. I really like the kind of the fingers of the rock out front. But I didn't like the tree sitting on the rock in that position, so I tried some more variations, and I kind of like this one. The top of the tree almost has a windswept look, and it's on the front edge of the rock here. The tree almost looks defiant. It's braving the winds that are blowing across the ocean or something, or the mountain winds. It just gives a bit more feeling to the planting. So I like this position now, so I'm going to try and arrange the roots the best I can around the rock to kind of guide them so they're clinging the rock as best they can. I'll start by giving the roots just a light watering. Make sure they're not drying out. Top of the tree too. There we go. So now I'm going to come in and try and guide all these roots into crevices and try and make it look like the roots were always clasping this rock. So that can be guided down there. That down there. It's looking pretty good. The roots fit the rock quite nicely. But I am going to have to prune some roots here. So here I go. I'm going to cut this one off here. That'll guide it down into the soil there. This one here I can trim off shorter here. That's down in the soil. The ones on this side, they can come down here, so I can prune it off here, and that'll get that root into the soil. This one we're going to have come down here, and the tip off there. So I'll probably place some stones on top of the roots to hold them down for now. Fill it in with soil, and that'll hold the roots in place until they, take that position. I'll start up front here with this root. I want to position it down into the crevice. I've got some more limestone rocks, some smaller ones, that I can use to position these roots. There, that's kind of gripping now. Now let's get this one in place. That's gripping nicely also. The other roots, we'll just comb them the best we can, and we'll cover them up with moss or soil until they start to grow down into the main part of the pot. Over on this side, I want to do the same thing. I want to position my roots so they're down in the soil, clinging close to the rock, like that, and another one here, which will kind of go underneath the rock a bit. Actually, that stays by itself. And the other roots will just comb out, and they'll go into the soil. I've got all the roots arranged around the rocks now. So now it's time to fill in the soil and put muck around the roots to keep them moist while the roots are growing and recovering. So I'm just going to place soil around and work it into the roots. All this soil will be removed someday. At least a lot of it. You might have a bit of moss there, but that's about as much soil as I can put on for now. Before I put the moss on, I'll give the tree a watering just to hold all the soil in place. I've got some moss from the cracks in the sidewalk, so I'll just wet it, and I'm going to place it on top of the roots. This moss isn't really meant as decorative moss, it's more just functional. It'll keep these roots moist and intact, and the soil in place, as the roots set in position and the tree starts growing again. Next year we'll be removing all this topsoil and seeing how the roots are growing and gradually expose the roots in the rock. But you can't do it all at once. It's got to be a gradual process. I'll keep this tree in the greenhouse here so it doesn't get a lot of wind blowing on it, and it keeps it humid until the tree recovers. I'm going to make sure all the moss is pushed into the soil. Make sure it's making good contact, or it'll just dry up and die. I'll water it quite often. This is a really good free draining soil, and pines like good free draining soils. So I'll, water it probably at least once a day in the greenhouse here, and it should stay nice and humid, and should be no problems for the tree to recover. Here's an overall look at the planting, the work that I did today on it. So definitely an improvement, I think. I'm gonna lift the pot now and just see how heavy it is with all those rocks in there. Here goes. That's not too bad. With the work done on the Literati Scots pine, it's time for today's update. Today's update is my Tamarisk bonsai, or it's called a salt cedar. I guess it was a bit of a shock to a lot of viewers that when I showed you this last, it had no leaves on it. Here in Canada, they lose their leaves. They go dormant for the winter, and then it grows again in spring. Warmer areas, they keep the green on all year round. So yeah, so it's growing well. I've already pruned it once, and it's ready for a second pruning. So I'm just going to go in and, keep the growth tight, pruning it back to the first set of leaves or needles, just to make it more compact. Just giving it a kind of a profile prune. And then I'm going to clean out any growth that's coming inwards. So I'm just removing any shoots. Like this shoot is growing in towards the trunk, so I'm going to remove that. Just being selective. I did, last time I pruned this tree, I planted the cuttings, and I got some of them that rooted and are growing well. So it's good idea. Anything you prune off, you can try it as a cutting. So I'm just keeping the branches that are fanning out from the tree. That's looking pretty good. Next up is some photos sent in for viewers' picks. Today's viewer picks are from Jason in Geraldton, Australia. That's it for today. So Nigel Saunders of KW Bonsai. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.